Hey, you. Yeah, I'm talking to you. I see you made it. Since you're here now, can you do me a favor real quick? Just sit back, relax your mind, and let's get real. Imagine a space where dads could simply be. A place where dads of all ages and backgrounds talk candidly about the highs and lows of this thing called becoming and being a brother, a husband, a dad. Step into the dadsphere, where we let you into the mind of dad, the place where many unspoken thoughts, questions, and fears live rent-free forever. Yeah, you heard that right. We're actually going to let you into our innermost being. It's necessary, and it's been missing. My name is Richard Sadler, but many people call me Rich, and I am the host of the Dadsphere. On this podcast, I'll be speaking from the heart about my journey to and in fatherhood. I'll be talking with other fathers, unpacking their stories in hopes of creating a space where fathers keep it real, always. Creating a space where we lift each other up and sharpen each other in the process. Subscribe to this podcast today. Go check out the website at thedadsphere.com. Go follow on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok, of course, at The Dad Sphere. Tap in and stay locked in as we travel through the Dad Sphere. Let's get it. What's good, y'all? Thank you so much for tapping into the Dad Sphere with me again today. You know, you could be anywhere that you wanted to be at this point in time, but you chose to spend a little time with me. And for that, I am extremely grateful. Jumping into the topic for today, I want to paint a little picture for you guys. Imagine you are newly married and about 2-3 months into your marriage, your wife, your spouse is coming to you and telling you that you're gonna be a dad. Now backtrack that just a little bit. Imagine that your spouse, your wife is coming to tell you that, and you have not informed your mother, your family, your extended family, the family that you grew up with, that you are indeed married. So that was me, guys. That was me. That was my circumstance. You know, I didn't inform my mother that I had actually gotten married. I didn't inform my family that my wife and I had actually gotten married in December of 2015. So they thought that we were kind of just living together, but that wasn't the case. We were actually legally married. And, you know, fast forward and come a little after February, my wife's coming to me telling me that she's pregnant. And look, guys, I was in, quite a bit of shock. I was quite frankly very, very, very upset. And I know that some people may disagree with this, or they may think, how could you be upset? You know, expecting a child is a wonderful thing. And quite frankly, there are people who want to have children of their own and they can't. But I wasn't in that place. I had a lot going through my mind. You know, at that time, it was the fact that I had withheld probably the most important decision that I have made in my life thus far at that point in time, of getting married, from my mother and from my family. And then on top of that, I'm expecting a baby, and I am not anywhere near I want to be, and at a place where I feel like I can support my wife and this new baby that is supposed to be here later on that year. So when my wife told me, I was extremely upset. And, thinking back on it, I get upset with myself, and I can't believe that I behaved in the manner that I did. I behaved like a boy, quite frankly, and it was because, I was afraid. I was afraid that although I made a vow to myself back when I was 7 that I was going to have to be something that I didn't see, I didn't know how I was going to go about doing that. And in essence, I wanted to be perfect. I thought that there was a perfect time, to get married. I thought there was a perfect time to have a child. I thought that there was the perfect amount of money that you needed to have, or the certain amount of money that you needed to have in order to provide for and care for your family. And quite frankly, it scared me, man. I think at that point in time, I was 25, 26 years old, I believe, at that point in time. So it was not like I was early 20s, but I just wasn't ready for that. Um, so when my wife told me, we were in I would say our second apartment together. The first apartment that we had, um, we actually didn't stay in it very long, after we had gotten married, just because I wasn't trying to keep us on that side of town at that point in time. So it was in our very first apartment. And when she told me, it was my wife and myself, and we had a little dog, a little, what was he? It was a Cocker Spaniel. No, he was a cockapoo. We had a little cockapoo named King. So it was myself, King, and my wife. We all lived together in this 2-bedroom apartment. And when she told me, I remember her coming home, one day, and she she had taken like pregnancy tests. I believe she had taken one before she had come home, but she had taken some more when she had gotten home. And like, instead of me embracing her when she gave me this news, like, completely stonewall her. And it wasn't because, I was angry with her. It was more of like, I was really angry with myself, and pretty disappointed in the situation that I had created for myself, because now it's like, well, you didn't tell your mama that you got married, and now there's this baby that's coming in. You guys can't hide that. And I didn't tell my mama, that we had gotten married, or anyone else that we had gotten married, because we were looking to save money to have the big wedding that my wife desperately wanted, and I wanted to be able to give her that. But now with baby on the way, it was like, that's not the wisest thing to do. So when she told me, I completely stonewalled. I think I made her take a series of tests to validate that she was indeed expecting, that we were expecting. And even after I received that validation from the test, I still didn't like welcome her with, warm, loving arms. I was very cold. And looking back on it, and I've thought this many times, and I've told my wife, about this, I wish I could go back and I could change that. I could change my behavior, because it was uncalled for, quite frankly. My wife, she didn't get pregnant by herself. It takes two for that. And I should not have handled her that way. She didn't deserve it. But, I was angry for, I want to say it was probably about 2 weeks that I was angry. And I had a guy that I worked with at this point in time. He had actually taught some classes at the company that I worked at that point in time. And I was telling him, kind of talking to him about what was going down. And he looked me square in the eyes. I remember we were standing in the parking lot, and I was having one of my moments, out there in the parking lot. And he was like, I'm going to let you vent. I'm going to let you get through this. And he did. But he looked me square in my eyes, and he was like, look, you need to get your crap together. You need to get it together. She didn't create this child by herself. You assisted in that. That's your baby. You need to man up. And you got to show up. Step up to the plate, buddy. He was like, you grew up playing baseball, right? It's your time to shine. It's your time to step up to the plate. And you got to put the show on for you and your family. And that was hard. That was a very hard pill to swallow, because I'm battling the fears of, what if I turn out like what my father turned out like? What if I can't do this? Or how do I do this? Or, God, we don't have enough money. I can't support, myself and my wife and now a baby. Like, how am I supposed to do this? Babies are expensive. And on top of the fact that I hadn't told my family that I was married yet. So fast forward, I have to go to my mother, and I remember calling her. I think I was in the parking lot of, it's a Lowe's Foods now. It wasn't Lowe's Foods back then, but I was in the parking lot of a grocery store, and I remember calling her and telling her, Talisa is my wife. She's expecting. We're expecting. And I remember like this radio silence on that phone. And I followed it up with, oh, and by the way, I know that you guys thought that we were just living together, but in reality, we weren't. We actually got married in December of 2015. Now, this was like, I believe it was April of 2016 that I was telling my mother this. So, not only that, my mom's having to digest the fact that she is going to be, a grandmother, and that's exciting. But she's having to digest the fact that her son has been married for how many months at that point in time, since December 2015, and I hadn't told her. I hadn't said one single word to her. And, my wife, she told me that I needed to tell her. She told me that before we even got married, she was like, you need to tell her. She needs to be in the loop on what it is you're deciding to do, what we're deciding to do. And I opted not to because I was fearful. And looking back on that, I didn't have a reason to be fearful. So, we fast forward and, things are rough in our relationship after I told her that, because it's kind of like, man, how could you withhold this information? And I did. And I deeply regret that. And, my mother knows that, and everyone around me knows that. If I can go back and do it all over, I would still marry my wife, but I would never withheld that information at that point in time. So fast forward, we go to, doctor's appointments for the baby that is to be born. And I kid you not, fellas, while I was still scared, because it was like, man, how am I going to do this? I don't really have a solid example in my father on what this looks like. I can't even pick the phone up and call him to, tell him what's going down right now, or like even question him, because one, I don't trust him to impart any sort of wisdom on me in those regards. And it's just like, we don't have that relationship. But we're sitting in the doctor's office, man, and fellas, I kid you not, when they're performing that ultrasound and I heard that heartbeat, it was like instantly everything shifted for me. It was like, oh my God, this is real. And it's like, you can do this. No, it may not be easy. It is going to be tough at times, but you're going to figure this out. You are going to get through this. And I kept telling myself that, and all I could do was hold my wife's hand and, support her through that. And I would say, like, the rest of our pregnancy, it was pretty good. Our pregnancy, for the most part, we had some scares when it came to my daughter that I won't disclose at this moment in time, but we had a pretty good pregnancy at that point in time. And then, fellas, let me tell you, so we get all the way to December of 2016. December 13th is when my princess was born. Fellas, it would blow your mind to see, or to know what went down in that room. Just to put it lightly, without going into all of the graphical or granular details of the situation, I cried the most in that room. It was one of those things where it was like it instantly became, real. Not only because there is this physical child, this physical baby that, you see that you're holding, but it's like, man, I'm her father, and this baby is completely and totally dependent on myself and her mother. Like, she can do nothing by herself. And it set in, and I cried like a baby when my daughter came out. I mean, my daughter, I don't even remember my daughter crying when she came out, but when she did, I cried. I remember for a fact that my wife, she didn't cry. She was kind of like delirious, like what's going on here? But I was boo-hoo crying. I mean, snotty nose, sleeve of my hoodie wet. I was boo-hoo crying. And it wasn't because at that moment in time that I was fearful, even though I still had those fears of like, am I going to mess up? Am I going to be what she needs? I had this fear of not being perfect. But I realized, it's kind of like what my mama would say. She's like, children don't come with manuals, and every child is different. And every parent is different, and like, you're going to make mistakes. I'm not perfect. So I had to fight my perfection in every situation isn't perfect. So I continue to have to try to fight my perfection because that's something that I struggle with. I struggle with the desire and the want to be perfect in every situation. But my daughter comes out and I'm crying the most in that hospital room, the delivery room, crying so much to the point that my wife's doctor was crying as well because I'm crying. And fellas, when they went to take my daughter off to get her bathed and take her to the nursery area, I never left my daughter's side. Not one single time did I leave her when they were, bathing her and whatnot in the nursery. I got to take part in that. When I couldn't physically be in the nursery for whatever reason, I was standing outside of the glass window in the nursery right in front of her little bed. I did not leave her side. And I kid you not, since my daughter, entered this world, I remember giving her my finger to hold, and her little fingers, her little hand gripped around my left index finger, and she would not let go. And to this day, it is still, that way for me. Like there's a special place in my heart, for my daughter. I love both of my children, but my daughter's 6 now and she'll be 7 in December. But there's such a special place in my heart for my daughter, because what I realized is at that point in time, even though my wife and we were only married just a few months before we were finding out that we were expecting, my daughter was exactly what I needed at that point in time. My daughter, she forced me to focus on things that were more than just about myself and my rise to, or my ascent to becoming what I deemed as being successful. Now, don't get me wrong, I still battle that to this day. Like, it's very hard. Us as men, we want to be successful in everything we do. At least most of us do. We want everything that we do to turn to gold. Everything that we touch, we want it to turn to gold. And quite frankly, we get wrapped up in dollars a lot of time, or we get wrapped up in our images or our work. But my daughter, her being born, it forced me to slow down somewhat. And it forced me to really see my wife and appreciate her in a entirely new light. But not only that, it showed me that I now have the opportunity to be what I didn't see growing up. And no, I may not know all of the ins and outs. No one ever does. But I have an opportunity to step up and give this child a life that was different than that of which I had. And that excited me. As much as it excited me, it scared me, because I didn't have, my father that I could call on to go to when things, arise, or things come up with my daughter. But I had that opportunity, and that meant the world to me. So, fast forward to this day, as I mentioned before, my daughter, she's coming up on 7. She'll be 7 in December, and that's my princess. I love her to death. But she helped me see my wife, like I said, in a whole new light. She helped me love my wife in a completely different way. She helped me conquer a lot of the fears that I battle with. The fear that, I wasn't going to be good enough, that I wasn't going to be a good father, that I couldn't be a father, quite frankly. She helped me tremendously with that. Now, if any of you know my daughter, she keeps me on my toes, but I love her with every bit of me. And I also realized that in that opportunity that my daughter was going to get the opportunity to have an image of the kind of man that she should hopefully one day want to marry, or the kind of man that would want to date her and court her and pursue her and hopefully end up in marriage at some point in time. But I had to realize I had to set that example. I had to be that example because I am the very first image of a man that my daughter was going to see. And that was scary, but it was a beautiful moment because it was like I had the opportunity to repaint the picture that I had seen, growing up. And don't get me wrong, my dad was there, for a period of time when I was younger, but he wasn't there the entire time. And that is, there's a whole different set of reasons for that some I may know about and some I may not know about. But my daughter had the opportunity to see me for who I was, and I had the opportunity to show my daughter what a good man could be, what a good father could be, what a good husband could be. And I am forever indebted to my daughter, for that, indebted to my wife for that, because it has helped me tremendously. Now, the road hasn't always been easy, and it's bumpy, and like we're still early in this game because, like I mentioned, my daughter is only going to be 7 come December, but I'm still learning. I'm taking things day by day, and this journey into becoming a father, it has already been, a whirlwind for me, because it was kind of like I felt like I was thrust into it, quite frankly, and I had to adjust and figure this thing out along the way, and I'm still figuring it out. But brothers, I know that I'm not the only one that has this story. Someone has a similar story, and even if you don't have a similar story, there are certain fears that you may have had as it pertains to becoming a husband and becoming a father, just because of what you did or what you didn't see, as a child. So I have one question for you guys. Well, actually, it's kind of like a 2-part question. You could choose to answer, one or both parts if you want. But one thing I want you guys to meditate on is, what scared you most about becoming a father? And if you weren't fearful, what excited you the most? Like, when I think back on it, I was extremely excited about the fact that, and I mentioned it earlier, I was extremely excited about the fact that I was now getting the opportunity to change the course of what my experience with fathers was like. Like, my kids were going to have the opportunity to see something different. And that excitement trumped all of the fear, that I had. Plus, I know that I had God on my side as well. He's in the center of my life, everything. So I'm going to give him all the credit for that, of course. But think on that. Think on that heavily. Like, what were you fearful of? What scared you? Like, let's be vulnerable. Let's be honest. And if you didn't have any fears, I find that hard to believe. But be vulnerable enough to tell another brother your story into and in fatherhood. You never know how telling your story may impact or help him. He may be exactly where you were at. And because you told him your story, you've helped him out. That's what it's all about at the end of the day. Let that sink in. I want y'all to know that I love y'all, and I mean that. So God bless, and I'll catch y'all next time in the Dad Sphere. I'm out. Peace.